Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Wamala. I'm widowed to the late Wilberforce Wamala, who was murdered on the 3rd of February 2012. I have decided to record this video with a view to respond to Mr. Ochola's progressive report on selected crimes. My husband, the late Wilberforce Wamala, was one of the people that were mentioned in your report. And you did mention Mr. Ochola, or whoever is responsible for writing this report, that the suspect, the only one suspect in my husband's murder, is on the run. Mr. Ochola, I have met you on two occasions, I think. But we have investigated this murder ourselves, or we did investigate this murder for ourselves because the police refused to be engaged. Mr. Ochola, we have the evidence in relation to do with Hassim Saleh. Hassim Saleh was one of the suspects. Hassim Saleh wrote an extrajudicial statement. He confessed to the murder. He incriminated two others. Those two were arrested and released under suspicious circumstances. Hassim Saleh ends up dead after he was apprehended in Zimbabwe. He ends up dead. We followed up on an inquest. The inquest determined, Mr. Ochola, that Hassim Saleh had been murdered. The police did not come out to contest these findings. They were served with this report. The DPP was served or provided with this report, and this report was shared. The DPP had informed us that because there was a few evidence on file, or no evidence whatsoever, that if the inquest determined that Saleh had been murdered, then they would use that information to find out who murdered him, because whoever may have murdered Saleh should have been involved in the late Wamala's murder. Not even your police officers that were on duty that day, the day Saleh is deemed to have been murdered, have been arrested, Mr. Ochola. When we move on to other suspects, there is also documentary evidence to show that a Mr. Luemba Apuli was found to possess a land title to a property that belonged to the late Wamala. When he was tasked to produce evidence that Mr. Wamala had given him this property, he produced a forged agreement, and it was determined to be forged by a police writing expert. That person has never been charged, Mr. Ochola. We suspect this title was obtained from the late Wamala's home the day he was murdered. He has never been arrested, he's never been charged. The other information has come from two witnesses who were at the police station the night Hassim Saleh was murdered. Mr. Ochola, Mr. Chemusto Francis, and the lady that has been identified to be Kasande Jole, and the late Andrew Felix Kawese presented at the Bokassa police post the night Saleh was murdered. We have a witness. He has recorded an extrajudicial statement. It's in writing, it's in audio, it is in video recording. The DPP, Mr. Michael Chibita, has got all this evidence. He has not arrested or tasked the police to arrest Chemusto Francis and has not arrested the other suspect that has not charged, because his job is not to arrest, is to charge and ask the police to arrest and charge. They haven't been arrested, Mr. Ochola. As if that wasn't enough, recently we stumbled over a forged land transfer form to the property that we all believed was the cause of the late Wamala's death. The police has information that I provided them with in relation to do with the land title to Muyenga. The person who sold us this property was the Haj Nasser Lubega. Mr. Ochola, Mr. Chibita has information that I have provided with them. It's not just information, it's documentary evidence in the form of forged transfer form where Haj Nasser Lubega, Saidi Bukenya, forged a land transfer form to the land they had sold to the late Wamala, isolating him and ending up killing him so they can repossess that property. Mr. Chibita, I have informed you that this property at the minute we are talking is in the hands of these people. The day the late Wamala died or was murdered, Mr. Saidi Bukenya contracted a security company to look after this property for him or for them. I understand he's a brother to Haj Nasser Lubega. These are the people that are incriminated in this murder. Joseph Patrick Seguja, Mr. Ochola, identified 5 suspects that were released from CPS 2 days before the late Wamala was murdered. Mr. Joseph Patrick Seguja has taken us to a house in Chitintele where the 5 suspects spent the night before they came to kill my husband. Mr. Chibita or Mr. Ochola, when we have asked the forensic department to go to Luzira to get some fingerprints taken off, or blood samples taken off the suspect so they can compare them with those fingerprints that were found at the crime scene the day my husband was murdered, they have refused. So who is fooling who? It's an abomination that you choose to lie to the public that you're actually carrying out these investigations. You have frustrated us. You have denied us justice, because justice delayed is justice denied. I urge you, Mr. Ochola, to follow up on this evidence. Mr. Chibita Michael has been a very big disappointment in this investigation. Mr. Chibita, I urge you to do your work. Justice is a human right. You can't deny us justice.